Hey, so I just realized that I did this whole video riding my bike through New York here, riding back, seeing all the boarded walls, and I didn't have the recording on. So I'm gonna talk separately now, not riding my bike. It's kind of hard to concentrate on riding and vlog at the same time, like to talk and ride. It's not as easy as it looks. You gotta be totally paying attention to the road and talk at the same time. You say all sorts of crazy shit because you can't really think. But here, I'm writing down, and a lot of things are boarded up, especially here in the middle. Again, if you saw the last video, you see all of that. And I think, it's really unfortunate, but I don't know how much of this is really just linked with a greater picture because I read this book actually. It was called The Fourth Turning. So I talked about how life basically goes in cycles, or the country itself seems to go through cycles. So there's like 4 seasons almost, and it lasts like the length of a human life, which is about 80 years. So if you're born in summer, then you're gonna go through fall, a winter, and the spring. Or if you're born in a winter, you're gonna go through a spring after that, a summer, and the fall. So basically, they determine like certain seasonal characteristics, and based on all the characteristics, they wrote this book back in the 90s. They determined they were in the fall season, and what was coming was the winter season. And they say winters are characterized by things like the Civil War and the Second World War. So usually that is the time where the country can either survive this great shakeup, or it can not survive it, and then something will happen there. Like, this is the point where we determine the next 80 years basically, and how we're gonna go forth. And countries don't all have the same rhythms, but that in Western civilization, it's a very marked rhythm. So what they talked about back then was what we're gonna go through now. They said starting, that basically winter started in 2008 with the crisis, the economic crisis in 2008, which I do believe that's when this all began. In 2008, the big unraveling, where I think like the major thing that came about there was basically the banks taking over, the start of the bank taking over, the start of the divergence in wealth between the rich and the poor. Now, this is not something I think about capitalism, because in capitalism, you do get that divergence, but they earn it. I don't think there's a problem with rich people who earn their wealth. The problem is with rich people who don't earn it, who are just born into wealth, just continue living, don't ever create anything, and don't make anybody's life better. They just have more money because they do. And then, like, having people that no matter what they do are not able to move forward, then because they're just indebted from day one, that's kind of a problem there. Servitude is not part of capitalism. If you have debts, you should be able to go bankrupt, and then whoever lent you that money should take that loss. And basically what we started having in 2008 is just like a major bank takeover, where now rich people just keep getting rich because you could kind of still go bankrupt, but there's a lot of things that you can't go bankrupt on, like student debt, and you just stay a slave basically to that debt. But at the same time, there's other debts, like that you could take them over if get rid of them if you go bankrupt, but you don't really. Bankruptcy really here means a lot, because if you go bankrupt on your 30-year mortgage, will you ever be able to buy a house again? Whereas in right now, what happens is the bank that lends out that money, they can't go bankrupt. The government pays them the money, and the government collects that money through taxes. And taxes, believe me, it's not paid by the rich. It's paid mostly by people working, and through devaluation of the currency, which is felt more by poor people. Because when they devalue the currency, then the price of assets go up. The price of houses, the price of these buildings, the price of wealth, of stocks, those have all been going up. But someone who doesn't have assets, someone who all they have is money, the money that they have in the bank, the little money they have in the bank, that is the money, that is what's losing value, the money. So basically, a poor person who doesn't have assets is already placed somewhere where they continue to lose money. Meanwhile, the bank continues to gain money, because even if you default on your debt, what we're having now is the government just pays them anyway. So it's like tails you win, heads you win if you're a bank. It's like if their customer pays their mortgage, then they win. They did a good job. Their customer doesn't pay the mortgage, well, they still get paid. They just turn to the government, and then they get the money, which was something that was basically set in motion in 2008 with the big bailout of the banks, the housing crisis. Because what would have happened there if you didn't have a bailout in the banks would be, a lot of people would default, but what will come of that is a lot of houses going into the market, which would be housing prices going down, which would be people maybe even being able to afford houses without even needing a mortgage, without even needing to go into debt in the first place. But the government basically kept things up by bailing out the banks, and that has continued, because ever since that is when the big divergence started between the rich and poor, where the poor continued getting much poorer and the rich started to really become much richer. And now with this coronavirus thing, you see even more of that. Again, another opportunity where the rich, who are all invested in assets, the value of these assets came down from these businesses not producing, from things locking down. That it was one of those situations where you could lose. But again, the government came in, massive bailouts to rich people, basically, to all their rich buddies, the banks, the people with big stock portfolios. Those all went up. Whereas poor people, they lose their job, they get $1,200. But the prices of things this time is going up, because you're not producing like food, for example. So you're just giving out money, but there's not as much food, because there's a lot of people not going to work that work in food. So you see prices of food going up. So despite these $1,200, I don't think anybody is really, getting much richer. Maybe a little bit, because they're not going out and actually spending it. They're just staying home. But that's not really getting richer. You just have, not enjoying the money. You're not, your level of what's it called, like your standard of living has gone down, because you're no longer able to do that. You might have a little more money sitting on the sidelines, but if we were to go back here, like things open up, we go back to the standard of living from before, you would then notice the big increase in price, and the $1,200 really wouldn't make up for it. Here you're seeing, I don't know, that car made a white turn. I ended up getting stuck behind them. So then that's how you end up seeing this, like it's just that just creates the tinder. And this book that I read actually said that all the unemployed people, the people that lose their jobs, the people that are really getting screwed over by the system, uh, that's been going on since 2008. The people without assets, the people that don't really see how they're gonna have a future here, those are the soldiers of the next war against the current system. And that's what you're seeing here. Those people are coming out and just letting off that energy. I don't think it's really, maybe it's being driven, it's being led towards being like a racial thing here, towards being like a white versus black thing, but it's really not. It's just, that's just the way the energy is being led. But it's really those connected and those not connected to assets, those with assets and those without assets, and this is really important time. Like, we need to see what the actual issue here is. The actual issue here is the Federal Reserve and the banking system that has taken over, this bailing out the rich system. It's not capitalism, this system. And I think one of the worst things that we could do here is we could end up with communism even, from misreading what the actual issue is and allowing that side to win, because there's going to be a side that wins here. And this battle, which they estimate is about a 20-year cycle each cycle. So this winter is going to culminate in the 20s here. Sometimes if it started 2008, then it should culminate by 2028, or as late as 2030, I suppose. And we'll see who wins here. It's going to be a battle here. Things are going to change very much, and it's up to who rises up in leadership. There's people out there. I myself want to stand, and kind of just let out the message that I have here and see how things develop. But that's why I'm coming here and buying gold in New York, because that, this channel is about motorcycles and gold.